welcome to a very special episode of the Digital Days Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Swick, and as always, I'm joined by Dave Hunt. Okay, Dave's not here. He's on vacation, which is why I'm doing this episode solo. My backup was Josh Langford, but he's also on vacation. As far as I know, they are not on vacation together. If not, I'm going to be very hurt. But as far as I know, completely unrelated that they're both on vacation right now. So, I debated on whether we would drop a Patreon episode here. Maybe I would take a week off, which I was really close to doing because it sounded appealing. Not that this is a lot of work, I'm just talking into a microphone, but it was like, it might be a lot of work if I'm like talking to myself. Like right now I'm hoping one of my cats sits on my desk so then I can just talk to them like I usually do about video games and shit they don't understand. But they're both in the other room with Sarah, and I didn't want to force Sarah to get on a podcast and talk about video games. So I decided to just reach out to the community, ask for questions. The community did deliver, but I also figured I'd talk a little bit about some news items that were interesting to me, as well as talk about what I'm playing. Might not do what I'm watching, not really watching too much, mostly just playing video games, and the usual work and sleep. Let's just hop right into the news. The first story is Xbox adds Discord voice chat. So this is a great thing. Xbox announced that Discord voice is coming to the Xbox consoles. The process is a little convoluted. You do have to link or relink your Xbox account with Discord, and you will still need to use the Discord app and the Xbox app. It sounds basically like you're just routing your audio to your Xbox console. So you're basically going to get in your Discord, push it to the Xbox app, push the Xbox app to your console, and then it will be Discord voice chat mixed in with your regular voice chat options on the console. So this is fantastic. I was super excited that this was happening because a lot of my friends just use Discord because they don't like using Xbox Live, and they also don't like using PlayStation Plus voice chat. I noticed that a lot. It's just a convenience thing because everyone's on different platforms now. So the Discord integration is something we've all wanted. And even though most of my friends are on PlayStation, they still use Discord because they just don't really like the game-based integration into PS5. And then Xbox, I don't really have many friends on Xbox, and the ones that I do have are just using Discord for everything on their phone. So this is going to make their lives a little bit easier. Hopefully, it's not too much of a process. The instructions made it seem like it could be a little annoying and shows that it wasn't an easy process because Xbox a while ago began some Discord integration by letting you view games being played by people that are on Xbox. So you could show an Xbox player that is playing Halo or something, you can see what they're playing in Discord. And that was their integration. And that is similar what PlayStation announced earlier this year when they said, hey, we're connecting the PlayStation accounts into Discord, so now your friends can see what you're playing when you're playing on PlayStation. And people were expecting PlayStation to announce voice chat, especially after last May, they made that investment in Discord. And this is when I kind of turned into PlayStation Defense Force last week, because a lot of people were roasting PlayStation that Xbox beat them to Discord voice chat. But Xbox was working with Discord before PlayStation, so I am just assuming, based on the current integration, that it is a more complex system that they're working with in order to integrate Discord voice into the console, and Xbox just happened to have a head start on that. And PlayStation, while yes, they did invest in Discord, PlayStation cannot just tell Discord, hey, we know you're working on the Xbox support, drop that and focus on us. That's not how that works. PlayStation did not buy a majority stake in Discord. They invested in Discord. So if you look at the time frame, I would imagine we're looking at the same time frame for PlayStation hit it. So you can go back and see when Xbox announced that you were able to see what people were playing on Xbox in Discord, and then that time from now, where now you can do voice chat. So I'm assuming PlayStation's voice chat options is still a little bit away, just because they started later than Xbox. So it is coming to PlayStation, I can almost guarantee, and it will probably be a very similar setup to what we see on Xbox, where you're still going to need to use the Discord app on your phone and the PlayStation app on your phone to get in there. So we'll see what happens with that, and I'm just happy we're moving that direction, especially with crossplay. Discord is just the way it has to be at this point, because we can't rely that much on in-game voice chat, because it's usually of a lower quality, and you have to interact with douchebags in-game, and yeah, you don't want to do that. So bring on the Discord support and everything. Maybe one day Nintendo will jump aboard, but I'm assuming that will probably be like 3 or 4 years too late before Nintendo finally jumps aboard on this, because they haven't even got started with it. So we're probably looking at either never or like 5 years away, when everyone's moved on to the metaverse and have abandoned Discord, is when Nintendo will announce their Discord partnership. All right, the second bit of news that was interesting to me just started to develop, I want to say yesterday, which it was Monday, for those obviously listening on Thursday. EA is making a Black Panther game. So this is coming from Jeff Grubb on the Giant Bomb Game Mess Mornings, I believe is the new podcast. So he revealed that EA has a new studio based in Seattle that is being led up by Monolith Productions' former head and VP, and they are working on a single-player, open-world Black Panther game. Apparently, the story revolves around players becoming the new Black Panther. There's no details on like what that means. It almost sounds like, from his description on the podcast, like you might be creating the next Black Panther, so it's going to be like a custom character you become. But there's no detail on if this means, you're either creating a character, or maybe you're becoming T'Challa following the death of his father, or if you're potentially following T'Challa, which I don't know how I feel about that. Like, T'Challa is such an amazing character, so the idea that you would be following his death just doesn't sit well with me. Like, I could understand why they would probably want to stay away from T'Challa, just because that's now synonymous with, the MCU's version of T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman. So I don't know how they're going to play this, but there also wasn't a lot of details on which way we should speculate on this, on whether it's, hey, you're actually playing as T'Challa, or hey, you're creating the next Black Panther. So, not a lot of details. It is EA, which is scary, though it is being head up by some people from Monolith, which is a little encouraging. From everything that's come out since then, it seems like EA has kind of looked at how well the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game has went, and they are more open to single-player games. Now, of course, they're going to go open world, because every game has to be open world, and that, again, is something I don't know how I feel about, like, an open world Black Panther game. I honestly, don't feel like most heroes work for an open world. Like, Spider-Man, perfect open world superhero, because New York City is a character, basically, in the Spider-Man, lore. Gotham, for Batman, is a character. Metropolis is a character for Superman. But when it comes to other characters, I don't know if they need open world games. I imagine Insomniac's Wolverine game is going to be more linear of an experience, because you don't really associate Wolverine with a place. And Black Panther, yes, you associate Black Panther with Wakanda, but I think I would get more from a linear game for Black Panther. Like, see a very focused story based on the Black Panther lore, as opposed to Black Panther running around Wakanda. Because I just don't know what you do with that. And I also don't see Black Panther, like, globe-trotting and solving other issues. Like, I would want a focused experience from a Black Panther, like, video game based on my experience with, like, reading the comics. But too early to speculate on this. It says this is, like, very early in production, so I don't even know how far this has been greenlit, if it's been greenlit, or if it's just in that, like, pitch state. But it sounds like EA's at least open up to the idea of, like, single-player games after the success of Star Wars, which is good to see. So, hopefully we get away from all sorts of loot box shenanigans, and we can get some cool Marvel experiences going, because we also, you know, as mentioned earlier, we have Wolverine, you know, we have another Spider-Man game, we are getting something from Skydance, from Amy Hennig, so we are seeing Marvel stuff. We just got Guardians of the Galaxy. We probably won't see a Guardians 2, based on how Square Enix just sold that studio away, and Marvel probably isn't going to renew the rights, or I don't know if the current owners of Eidos want to license out a Marvel game right now. But I like where superhero games are at right now. You know, you got Insomniac doing your thing. Hopefully Warner Brothers and Rocksteady can figure out what they're doing. I know Suicide Squad's coming next year or 2 years from now, and that looks like that could be interesting, but I now worry about where that's going, where when they started Suicide Squad, live service games were the shit, and that's all people wanted. People just wanted, like, live service co-op games. And now we're moving in a direction where Spider-Man was so damn successful. Guardians was critically acclaimed. I don't know where that's going to lead to Suicide Squad, but at least in EA's case with Black Panther, they see the signs and they're going with, like, a single-player open-world game. And by the time it's done, I think we'll be in, like, another, like, superhero renaissance, because we could have a year where we have Wolverine and Black Panther coming out with games within, like, the same year of each other, which would be amazing for Marvel fans. So, don't have the most faith in EA, but I'm willing to give them a shot if they're going to go single-player route with Black Panther. But that's it for the news. Keeping it really light. I don't want to, like, drag this on too long, because I don't know how this is going to sound as a podcast. Me just rambling for, you know, like a half hour. I figure that would be safe. You know, half hour sounds good. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Okay. As for playing this week, I'm still playing Arcadegeddon. I still struggle to type out Arcadegeddon on my, you know, little Google Doc that I keep to organize the podcast. It's constantly one where I just I Google Arcadegeddon, copy and paste the name, and then just paste it into my doc. But I am still playing Arcadegeddon. I still do not like any of the writing whatsoever. But luckily it's super easy to ignore, and I could just get right into the gameplay. I am doing a lot of the PvE stuff solo still, but I'm enjoying the mechanics, just building up the loot. I didn't mention last week, but you do pick up, like, boost cards as you're playing randomly, and they stack different abilities on you, and I've just loved, you know, playing for like an hour and then seeing how many cards that I can get, how many cards I've stacked, and just how overpowered you could get after, like, a good, like, hour to 90-minute run, where I almost feel unstoppable. Luckily, the game does scale difficulty as you play to counterbalance that, but for the most part, you feel pretty powerful if you're in a good run for a long time. I have been having a lot of fun with the PvP stuff. I had a really hilarious experience, which I thought was going to be a bad time because I played in the middle of an afternoon, and I shouldn't have because that means I'm just playing with a bunch of kids, and it totally happened where I play in the afternoon, immediately get sent into a lobby for PvP, and there's like 2 or 3 children with microphones, and it was hilarious because I beat the shit out of them. I made some children cry during this game, and that's all you can ask for, you know? As you get older and you play video games, you know time's coming from you, your reflexes are getting kind of shit, and video games are a young man's sport. So every once in a while, when you can just beat the shit out of some children in a video game, I have to emphasize in a video game, it's a really good experience. So like Arcadeageddon gets like some bonus points this week because like some kids cried on mic while I played. And that is, means it's priceless. And that has been basically my Arcadeageddon, is just doing PvE and then occasionally getting on PvP and then occasionally hearing children cry because I guess I wouldn't say I'm good at this game, but I'm better than a bunch of children. That's all I'm going to say. The main game, though, I want to talk about today is, of course, Stray. Stray came out last week. It was a PlayStation Extra and Premium game. You got to get used to that. So I basically upped my last 6 months of PlayStation Plus Essential to Premium just so I can get a hold of this game. Because it ended up being around the same thing. I think Stray is around like $30 or $40, and to upgrade my Plus it was like $26 or $27. So I was like, you know what, let me just upgrade it so I can play the 1 or 2 PSP games that they have on the service, and then of course I can play Stray. Stray's fantastic. Stray's up there with one of my favorite games of the year. For those unfamiliar, Stray is a game where you control a cat in a dystopian future post-apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic world, and it's just like a platformer with some puzzle elements where this cat is just trying to help these like robots see the sky. So the game for the most part takes place in like this underground dome area, and the robots, they want to see the sky. They've only lived underground, and through the story you find out, what happened with the world and what's going on with these robots. And it's a really like beautiful game. They did a really good job of capturing an animal, like capturing a cat's mannerisms and movements. And I think a very under talked about thing right now, because everyone is just talking about like, oh my god, the cat's so cute, which it fucking is. But people don't really talk about how this game is actually able to make you care for robots, which is a very hard thing to do. Like, I was always super worried about like the cat's safety, because the game, while it doesn't get difficult, it can get stressful, because you don't want to see like the cat get hurt, and you controlling it are in charge of that. But I got really attached to some of these like robot AI characters, and they are like the main focus of the game. The cat is just a vehicle to tell their story, and I think it's very, very well done. And I absolutely adore this game. And it's not crazy long, so I was able to beat it in like 3 sessions. I think it took like 5-6 hours to beat this game, which I think is totally acceptable. Like, I know some people like throw a fit about like shorter games, but when it is a very tight and enjoyable experience, I think it's okay for a game to be 5-6 hours long. I think it is definitely like a must play. Like, if you have PlayStation Plus Extra or Premium, which I hate, I have to pause every time I think of the new PlayStation Plus tiers, I think if you have either one of those tiers, you need to play Stray. Stray is a must play PS5 and PC game that I think anyone can enjoy and play, because again, the game isn't like super difficult. It can be a little stressful, but it's pretty intuitive, so the puzzles don't get too difficult. The platforming is pretty forgiving. Like, you can't really... The game will show you where it's safe to jump with just like the X prompt, which is used to jump. So you can't really like accidentally jump off things, because the cat will stop and you'd have to like point the camera to different spots where it is safe to jump. So the game isn't that difficult, so I think multiple like skill levels can play and enjoy this game, and I definitely think it is worthwhile. If I were to score it, which I honestly forget what scores we give games on this show. I think we're on a 5-star scale, so I would say 5-star. So 5 out of 5 for Stray is definitely a highly recommended game. I enjoyed it. My cats enjoyed it. My cat Reggie basically sat on the couch with me and Sarah every time we played the game and would just follow the cat along the screen. After a while, he kind of was like, okay, I get it. It's a cat on TV, and he didn't care. But that first night, maybe the second night, he was definitely interested in seeing what is happening with the cat on the TV. But that is Stray. Again, highly, highly recommend Stray. Now, I'm going to talk about a game that made me question life, made me question why we play video games, made me just wonder, what am I doing with my life? And that's Power Wash Simulator. And I know what you're thinking. The game where you have a hose and you clean things made you think about life? And yes. So I played Power Wash Simulator for about an hour. Half hour into it, clean the hell out of a van. Van is spotless clean. Looking great. But then I get into like the second level where I'm cleaning a backyard and I'm questioning, why is this backyard this dirty? The house seems structurally fine, so it's not like a natural disaster happened. These people are just really dirty. Where did all this mud and dirt come from? These are all thoughts running through my head while I'm playing it. But as I'm spending a good like 10-15 minutes trying to get the dirt off the side of the house and clean the concrete outside and making sure the fountain is spotless, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I am playing a game where I'm cleaning. I have a whole ass apartment that I could be cleaning and getting satisfaction from, but then also getting the benefit of having a cleaner apartment. My apartment's really clean right now because when I do get bored, I do clean, but it could always be cleaner. But instead, I was playing Power Wash Simulator because it was on Game Pass, and I've seen everyone like memeing about like how fun the game is and how silly it is, like every game that has simulator in the title. But holy shit, I was just playing this game and just like, why do I do this? Why do I play video games? What is the point of video games? And I don't think that was the intended thing that the developers wanted, to make people question why they play video games. But definitely came across my mind, because then I was like, okay, I need to stop playing. Let me play another game. Oh shit, my brain is too tired from working all day. I guess I'll play NBA 2K. And then, again, played a first half, was in the middle of the third quarter, and then I started popping my head. Why do I play video games? Why do I do any of this? And I just had to put the controller down and to stop playing video games for the night. And honestly, I haven't played a video game since I played Power Wash Simulator, which, again, is probably not the effect the developers of the game wanted, but for whatever reason, maybe because it was after a long day of work, but Power Wash Simulator broke my brain for video games. I hope I can recover eventually. I will try to play Arcadegeddon next time I have energy, which will hopefully be tomorrow or Thursday. I don't know, but if I start playing a video game that I enjoy and then I start questioning life and what's the point of video games, I'm going to be very angry at Power Wash Simulator. And this podcast is going to get very, very weird. And speaking of weird podcast, I asked community for questions because I was going to be by myself and I was going to need some help. Community came in pretty strong, so we got a wide range of questions. Don't worry, I'm going to save the wrestling questions for the very end for those that want to just kind of skip out on that aspect. But let's jump into some of these questions. The video game questions we'll start off before we get a little off subject and back into wrestling. But first question is from Ali. He asked us in a Facebook group, what series of games have you put the most time into, and which was your favorite iteration of that franchise? Okay, for me, if you've been listening to me on podcasts for the last couple years, you would know I was super huge into the Killzone franchise. Killzone 2, I put about 2,000 to 3,000 hours into Killzone 2 alone. And then Killzone 3, I probably put maybe 500 hours into it. And then Shadowfall, I probably put like 20 hours into it because I just didn't hit... Shadowfall didn't do anything for me. And then, of course, there's like a little bit of time in Mercenary. And then, of course, I played like the remaster of Killzone 1. I feel like there's another Killzone game that I'm missing, but I could be wrong. So I would say I put the most time into the Killzone series, with Killzone 2 being my favorite. A follow-up to that would probably, if we're just talking about like what is my favorite series, it'd probably be Kingdom Hearts series and Tony Hawk series, specifically the Pro Skater series, with the most time being put into Kingdom Hearts 2 and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, but I have not put nearly as much time into both of those franchises combined than what I put into Killzone, specifically Killzone 2, which came out when I was like in high school, which is why I was able to dedicate a ridiculous amount of time into Killzone 2. And if Overwatch had a second game that was out already, Overwatch would probably top that, because I know I put like 2,000 to 4,000 hours into Overwatch 1, but Overwatch 2 is not out yet. I haven't played it, so I can't include it. Okay. Matt Lowe asks, if you could only choose one game to play for the rest of your life, what would it be and why? I've been thinking about this all day, and a lot of stuff popped into my head. I was like, first thought, Stardew Valley, cool. Second thought, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, cool. The only problem is those games do have an end, and as much as you want to keep those games going forever, I don't know if that would work. Like, I will probably still play Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 for the rest of my life. I return to that game probably almost every year, maybe every other year. I return to that game specifically. But a game that I have been playing my entire life and will continue to, because they keep making different iterations of it, would be Tetris. I've been playing Tetris on Game Boy Color, which is the same Tetris, sorry. I've been playing Tetris on, Tetris Effect, Puyo Puyo Tetris. I've been playing I would play Tetris on my TI-81 graphics calculator. Like, I had Tetris on that, and I'm talking about like Tetris that would only on those like Texas Instruments calculators. Most of the Tetrises that were on that were fan made and usually would stop at 300 lines. So I would play that a lot, to where I would just beat Tetris that day, because I would just be like, all right, I hit 300 lines, and even though that's as far as I could go on that graphics calculator, I would still play it like almost every day. Usually in the math class I should have been paying attention to, but I was bad at math, so I just played Tetris on my calculator all the time. So Tetris is a game that I'll probably be playing for the rest of my life, because it's just good. It's very therapeutic. Okay. Randy asks, best games of the year so far. So I do keep a running list in my my notepad of games I played, and I do rearrange them based on where I think they're going to be on my game of the year. And currently, my top 3 are Elden Ring, Stray, and Sifu. So those are my top 3 games. I didn't beat Elden Ring, but I enjoyed Elden Ring so much that I hope to get back to it. I put about 60 hours into it, but it's definitely a game that I haven't seen the level of like effort and intricacy put into a game in a long time. I'm saying that as someone who has not played Red Dead Redemption 2. And I know that is also one of those open world games that is like ridiculously put together and gigantic. But Elden Ring felt way more special because Red Dead tells you where everything is, but Elden Ring is like, no, we're not going to tell you what to do, how to do it. We're just going to let you out, and hopefully all the players find all the secrets in it, and they probably won't find all the secrets in it. So Elden Ring, hands down, is like my game of the year so far. There are a couple games that have a chance of topping it that hopefully are good that come out later this year. But right now it's Elden Ring. Stray at number 2, which could end up being adjusted the further I get away from it, but I just finished Stray and it left a good impression on me. So it's number 2, and then Sifu is number 3, and I have to credit Sifu with giving me the courage to play Elden Ring, because Sifu was pretty difficult when it released, and I was able to get really good at Sifu, and that kind of gave me the confidence to be like, okay, I might be able to play Elden Ring. And it turns out I still suck at From Software games, but I did get further in Elden Ring than I've gotten in any of their games before. So, Elden Ring, hands down, game of the year so far. And I think we have a Patreon podcast that we recorded where me and Dave kind of go over like our first half of 2022. So that could be something to check out. Okay. I started to answer these questions out of order because I'm an idiot. So, okay. Roy Gibbs. I said solo show would be great. Question 1, what cancel game made you the most upset? Mine is Masters of the Universe for the OG Xbox. Okay, canceled games. The thing that pops up to me first is Heavenly Sword 2. So Ninja Theory did pitch a Heavenly Sword 2 to PlayStation, but PlayStation chose not to go with it. I believe part of the reason they didn't go with it is because it involved, spoiler, Naruto dies, I think, at the end of Heavenly Sword 1. And the game would have basically been Naruto coming back from the underworld. The only problem, God of War 3 was already going to do that. So that sequel was passed. So I was really upset. I loved God of War 3, but I really thought Heavenly Sword had like crazy good potential, but it didn't happen. That's the thing that pops to my head. Canceled game. There's been Unseen 64 has a whole list of like canceled games, and there are some like tech demos that have leaked out. Like there was an interesting like Spyro game where he was going to be like a full-grown adult dragon that was going with a more realistic look. That looks super interesting. Probably would have been bad like all the other PS2, PS3 Spyro games, but that had my interest. There's been a handful of like wrestling games that sounded interesting. I want to say there was supposed to be a wrestling game that was supposed to be like a side-scrolling story-based game that got canceled. I think it was focused on The Undertaker, or it might not have been, but there's been a couple like interesting non-wrestling games that have been pitched that never came to fruition. Question number 2 from Roy. Which Smurf would you want to see added as an added character for an upcoming Street Fighter 6? Okay. Smurfs came out in like 1981. I was born in 89, so I wasn't a Smurfs kid. Smurfs actually really, really annoy me because I don't know their purpose. If you check out the Every Movie Ever podcast, which I hosted, I think the podcast is still, you can still find it on like iTunes and stuff. I did like a 2-hour podcast on the Smurfs movie with my co-host Chad, where we just talked about how much we hated the Smurfs. So I don't know. I would want to see Chun-Li beat the shit out of Papa Smurf. So Papa Smurf is who I would want to see added to Street Fighter 6, just to see that. I would rather see Papa Smurf in Mortal Kombat so I can see him get impaled by Scorpion, but that's not the question. And question number 3 from Roy, when will you play Judgment? Okay, Arctic Soldier asks, what do you think of the future of the Marvel Universe movies? He asked this because San Diego Comic-Con just ended, and they basically announced Phase 5 and Phase 6, and it is kind of crazy. I'm pulling that up right now, which is why you can hear me typing. They basically announced 2 Avengers movies that are going to happen in the same year. Dynasty of Kane, and then... what was... I pulled up the wrong website. They did a listicle that wants me to just go through this. Secret Wars. Okay, I am super excited for Secret Wars. If you don't know what Secret Wars is, I'm not going to explain it. Look it up. It's too convoluted and complicated to explain over podcast, which is why I'm most excited for that one, because I have no idea how they are going to do Secret Wars in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I feel like it's going to be too wild and too crazy, and I worry it's going to be watered down, but I at least want to see them try. Outside of that, we got like Fantastic Four still coming, but it also has like a release date of November 8, 2024. They're super important to the Secret Wars storyline. So that is going to be vital, and that's going to be a year before Secret Wars, and I almost feel like you need to have like two Fantastic Four movies before you can do Secret Wars, but they're only going to do one, and then a bunch of movies in between for other characters. I have no idea how they're going to pull that out. But they also announced Thunderbolts. Don't know how that's going to go. I was excited for Daredevil Born Again, 18-episode Daredevil season with Charlie Cox and Vincent I forget how to always say his name, but the guy who plays Kingpin. So that probably is the thing that got me most interested. Of course, there's Captain America New World Order. Want to see where Captain America goes. Hope they give Sam Wilson a better Captain America suit. Did not like his suit in his TV show, but they always change the suit every time the character is in a movie or TV show, so hopefully they change it to something better, because I really want to see Anthony Mackie's version of Captain America in a standalone movie that doesn't require Winter Soldier to be there, especially if they're not going to ship them officially. Agatha gets a TV show. I liked Agatha, but I don't know how you're going to do a whole TV show unless it's just like some wacky thing that's not connected to anything. So we'll see what happens. Black Panther looks really interesting. I want to see how they're going to pull that off. Namor looks really cool. The first mutant, even though I can't say the thing I want to say because it's spoilers for Miss Marvel, but I want to see them get Namor into the universe. They're going to start him as a villain, but I have a feeling Black Panther 2 is going to feature Namor being a villain, and at the end of it, they're going to find out both of their moms is named Martha, and then they're going to become best friends. Assuming that's how that's going to go. Yeah, the Marvel stuff seems kind of wild because they announced so many movies and TV shows. Just for their Phase 5, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 movies and TV shows for Phase 5 alone, which goes from 2023 to the end of 2024. That's a lot of content. Hopefully we aren't completely burnt out by the MCU stuff. I'm starting to get a little burnt out by the MCU stuff, but I'm a completionist when it comes to the MCU, so I will watch every single one of the things. And I just hope by the time we get to the Avengers, they have an Avengers team that I want to actually watch save the world. I just don't know if I can think of the perfect Avengers team based on the group of people they have currently. But that's my opinion on all the Marvel MCU stuff. Okay. We're going to burn through the last couple questions a little quicker because I realized I already hit 40 minutes, which is something I wasn't expecting to do. John Binkley asks, who are your 3 favorite ska bands? So, after much thought, I think it is going to be Goldfinger, Catbite, and We Are the Union / Skatoon Network. So, Goldfinger, obviously, I talked about Tony Hawk Pro Skater earlier. Can't talk about that franchise, that video game, without thinking of Goldfinger and Superman. So, gotta have an OG one in there. Catbite is a good current day ska band. I think they're full ska. They might be maybe half and half. Like, a lot of bands have ska, connections, but they're not full ska bands. But I'm pretty sure Catbite counts as a ska band. If you want to listen to them, they have a really good ska cover of Selena's Song. Check that out. And We Are the Union is a really good ska band that one of their I forget, he plays the trumpet, I think, is also the person who's in charge of, or the only person in Skatoon Network, the YouTube channel that does like ska cover songs. So I kind of bunched them together. So that would be 3-4 ska things to check out. And then Stefan asks, what is your favorite disaster movie and why? I grew up with Independence Day, so I think Independence Day is my default answer, and it's because I grew up with Independence Day. That was definitely one of those movies that was always on HBO, like every afternoon and evening when I was growing up. That movie was in heavy rotation, and then once it finally left like HBO, it was on TBS or TNT every single day. So I probably watched Independence Day way too many times. And then I'd probably say Cloverfield is also another one. Cloverfield was a great disaster movie. Kind of brought back like the found footage thing that like Blair Witch kind of made everyone excited about, and then everyone ran into the ground. Cloverfield kind of brought found footage back for a little bit, and then found footage ran into the ground again. But it still holds up pretty well. Okay, now we're going to get into the wrestling questions. Hopefully I can get through these relatively quick. Drew asks, 70s, 80s, 90s wrestling era. Which roster wins? So, Drew, I'm going to say fuck the 70s. Because the 70s, you really only have, like, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erichs? Or are they 80s? Either way, fuck the 70s. 80s, the wrestlers were shit. Though you do have, like 5, like, worthwhile names from the 80s. But I'm going to say the 90s, because the 90s, you get a lot of those 80s stars doing good work in the first half of the 90s. So, you have Hogan, who never has done good work, but he's really popular. Macho Man, Ric Flair still doing good work. So you have like your 70s and 80s stars right there, like the top 3 probably from that era, still doing good work in the early 90s. And then when you get towards like the later half of the 90s, that's when you get Rock, Austin, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, all that stuff, the Attitude Era. So the 90s gives you best of both worlds, because you get the old school wrestling with Hogan, Flair, Savage. You get like the really good technical wrestling with like Bret Hart in the middle. And then you get like the Attitude Era, which is, again, Rock, Austin, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Undertaker. You get a ton of good like exciting wrestling from the 90s. So I'm going to go with the 90s. So, especially if you look back at the 80s wrestling, they were so steroided up. They could barely move their arms. It was really hard to watch. Anytime people are like, oh my God, look at this great match from the 80s. I just can't. Like, current wrestling is significantly better than it was back then. It's just not as popular as it was back then. And the storylines are actually better. Regardless, I could go on about this for a while, but I think now if you would have added the 2000s to 2010s, I would say 2010s have a better roster because I think the current wrestlers are significantly more athletic and have a way better mind of how to put a match together and make it more exciting for television than anyone in the 70s and 80s and even 90s were capable of. Okay, Justin, Duncan, and Andy ask similar questions. Basically, thoughts on Vince McMahon's retirement. Was it forced? Will the WWE products be better because of it? And Andy asks, let's have your thoughts on a recent WWE overhaul of the executive team. Those that are unaware, Vince McMahon has retired. He, in WWE, would tell you, he's just retiring because he's an old man. He's 77 years old. But in reality, it's because they investigated and he had a bunch of people he had to pay off because he was having sex with them and needed to make them sign NDAs and pay them to go away and stay quiet. That's why he's leaving. So, I actually think this is great for WWE in the long run. Vince McMahon needed to leave eventually because he was an out-of-touch old man who was putting out a terrible product. And getting him out of the way and putting Stephanie McMahon, who, say what you will about Stephanie McMahon, the wrestlers love working for Stephanie McMahon, and Triple H, her husband, being in charge of like talent and creative is great because when he was running NXT was like the most talked about wrestling program for several years. So having them at the top is going to be really good for WWE. Like, I know people are expecting things to change dramatically. It's probably going to take a while for things to change. And also, Vince McMahon's still going to be the majority stakeholder in WWE. So we don't know exactly, like, is he really staying away or is he just going to control things from the outside? We still need to find out. But in terms of keeping talent happy, putting coherent stories together, I think the WWE's better with younger people in charge. They just need to get rid of like Kevin Dunn, Bruce Pritchard, basically get rid of anyone from the old generation out as soon as possible and get rid of basically Vince McMahon's boys. You need to get rid of them because they still have Vince McMahon's worst like characteristics. They still will have that little bit of outdated ugliness attached to them. So they also need to get rid of those people and put completely new people in. And hopefully we can see a wrestling show that features wrestling coming out of WWE and doesn't have 1,000 camera cuts and doesn't drop storylines for 2 weeks because a 77-year-old man was bored, which currently happens. So hopefully we see that, and this leads to WWE having a tag team division. A WWE that can actually have more than 2 women's match per 3-hour show, that actually has a storyline and isn't basic, which is the current problem. It's either you fight for the title or you fight for some petty shit, and there should be something in between. And WWE currently doesn't have that. And WWE like isn't the only one that has that issue. AEW has no idea what they're doing with their women's division. Kind of don't know what they're doing with their title division, but that's because, or their world title division, because they're dealing with injuries right now. But like both AEW and WWE, it feels like they have no idea what to do with their women's division, which is shocking because they have some of the most talented women to ever exist in the wrestling world, and the fact that they can't figure out what to do with either one of their divisions is super frustrating. But in WWE's case, Stephanie and Triple H have shown in the past that they care about women's wrestling, so I think WWE's better off, at least in that aspect. And then if you look at tag team wrestling, Vince McMahon hates tag team wrestling, and it shows. Triple H likes tag team wrestling, so hopefully we'll see some good tag team wrestling. But I'm going to stop there. I went 50 minutes. I was only expecting to go a half hour. Hopefully this was listenable for you guys, and it would be something you guys would want me to do in the future, instead of, like if Dave needs to go on vacation, I'll just do this again. Or if I do mini stuff sprinkled out throughout the year, I could definitely do that as well. But you know where to find us. If you're listening to this right now, we're on social media and stuff. At Digital Days Pod on Twitter, Digital Days Gaming on TikTok, youtube.com/Digital Days Gaming, twitch.tv/Digital Days Gaming. You know where to find us. So I'm just going to sign off. I don't know how to sign off because Dave is usually leading the thing. He's usually like, hey, keep moving forward. And I'm like, hey, don't be a dick.